So we're going to go through single leg deadlift. This would always be my preferred option, especially if I want to hit the glutes over a glute bias RDL. So let's set it up first. Start with the feet hip distance apart and step 1 foot back. The aim of the game is to keep your hips even and square to the floor, so we don't want to be rotating out. And then I think the number one mistake that people make is they lock the leg out too much and they kind of drop forward from the torso. We want to sit back into the hip. So start by standing on one leg, hands on your hips, engage your core. We're going to soften the knee and we're aiming to maintain tripod foot, so even pressure through the ball of the big toe, ball of the little toe and the heel. The torso is going to stay in the same position. So the lower ribs and the pelvis are going to be pulled together and the torso is going to move as one. I want you to think about opening the space between the lower glutes and the top of the hamstring. So soften that knee, tripod foot, rib cage and pelvis stay friends. Sit back into the hip. Open that space between the lower glute and the top of the hamstring. Once you reach that stopping point, that natural stopping point, you're going to come back up. We're going to lock the leg out. We're going to fully extend the hip. Soften the knee. Sit back into the hip. And when you feel that natural stopping point, that's your end range. You're going to drive through the floor and stand all the way back up. Stability can be an issue in this exercise. So if you don't feel like you're ready for a single leg deadlift or you just want a more stable option, you can place the back foot against a wall or similar. And then the same rules apply. We're trying to keep those hips, we're trying to keep those hip sockets equal. I'm pressing into the tire with my back foot, tripod foot on the standing leg, soften the knee, sit back through the hips, rib cage and pelvis remain friends. So torso stays in the same position as we sit back into that hip. And we're opening the space between the lower glutes and the hamstring. Once we reach that natural stopping point, we drive through the floor and we come all the way back up. We've got a couple of options for how we load this. So if you hold 2 weights, that's obviously going to be an even load. It's going to be easier on balance and stability, and it's going to allow you to lift the most weight if strength and hypertrophy is your goal. But if you want to maintain good functional stability through the core and the hips for long-term hip health and functional health, then it's good to challenge yourself with a unilateral load. So we can either hold the weight in the same hand as the working leg, which would be ipsilateral, or we can hold the weight in the opposite side to the working leg, which would be contralateral. And they're both good. There's different benefits to each one. So if I hold the weight in the opposite hand to the working leg, it's going to put more weight on the opposite side of the body, and it's going to make it easier for the pelvis to rotate around the femur, so that as I'm coming into hip flexion, I'm creating more hip internal rotation, and you're going to get a lot of sensation in the glutes because there's going to be a lot of stretch and contraction to the deeper rotator muscles. And then we can hold the weight in the same arm as the working leg. I think this is the most challenging on stability, because if you've got all the weight on one side of your body, that weight is pulling you over to that side. And what I like about this is, in order to fight that, the adductor on that working leg has got to work really hard to pull the pelvis down and keep that neutral pelvis. And that kind of upper adductor area, deep groin area, is a very common area for weakness. So that's why I like this variation. Same rules apply. We'll go this way. Tripod foot, lats engaged, core lightly engaged, soften the knee, sit back through the hip. Open the space between the lower glutes to the top of the hamstring. Drive through the floor and stand all the way up. Torso moves as one.